Hey, hook me down there. Right here? No, that's budding. What's budding? What you're doing, I need you to hook it. I need you to hook it. There's nothing to hook. What is up, DIY Nation? Welcome back to YOUFLOOR, the channel bringing you tips and tricks to help you with your next flooring project. And today, we're taking it back to the basics. That's right, tape measures. Have you ever looked at a tape measure and said, whoa, what are all those numbers and symbols for? How come some numbers are red and some are black? What are these diamonds? And how can I get an accurate reading if the end of it keeps moving? Well, originally I was going to do this video about the basics of a tape measure, including tips, hacks, and tricks that I've learned along the way. But that would make for a super long video, and I like to make these videos where you guys can actually learn something and still get value out of them, but keep them short and sweet, get to the point so that you guys can get on with your day and get on with your project. We can save those sit back and watch long videos for Sundays when we're watching YOUFLOOR on the job. So I'll be breaking down these topics in about 2 to 3 different videos. So today the things we're going to be covering are how to read a tape measure, what are the different numbers and symbols and colors for, where to start and stop your measurements, and what is hooking and butting, and how do I know when to use which one. And along the way I'll show you a couple little things about a tape measure that you may not know. Alright, so let's get started. First thing is going to be how to read a tape measure. Here I have 2 tape measures. Both of them are from one of the leading makers in tape measures. In the olden days, this is about the width that they used to come, and this was pretty standard for the old Stanleys, you know, the metal case, or any other tape measure, Craftsman or whatever. They usually had a blade about this wide, and you'll notice that the blade is curved a little bit, and that's just to help it stand out a little bit longer when you're having to take long measurements. And then as you'll notice, the Fat Max has a little bit of a wider tape. This one looks like 1 1/8". It's probably more like 1 3/16" once you flatten out the curve. So 1 1/8", and then this one right here is just 1 inch. So you can see this one being a little bit fatter really has a longer standout. So if you're doing something like framing and you need to really reach out somewhere far to measure something, that will give you a whole lot longer of a standout before it breaks. And what I mean by that, before it goes, you know, and falls. So that's to begin with. All right, so let's take a look at these numbers and what everything means. This one right here is a little bit cleaner, so I'll go through that. I like to use the metaphor of music, and also, if you're not a musician, I use the metaphor of pizza. Everybody loves pizza, right? For music, I figured that for those musicians out there, I worked with a couple of them, and they weren't exactly sure what was going on. So I figured if I could relate this to music, it'd be easier. Also, I made a pizza here. We'll put the pepperonis and stuff on there later, but we're using it right now. Okay, so here's 1 inch. Okay, from 8 to 9 is what we would call a whole inch. And in music, there's a long line that goes across there with a bunch of lines, and they're separated into measures. Okay, and each measure has specific beats within inside that measure. So imagine from 7 to 8 is a whole note, and I'll count to 1, 2, 3, 4 just to show you what I'm talking about. So in a whole note, I would only smack it 1 time, but it'll be like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you were playing a musical instrument, you would hold that out. It'd be like duh. So you're holding that note out for a count of 4. And in 1 inch, as you can see, this would be considered your whole measure right there. Okay, so next we're going to split this in half. You see what I'm saying? So 1 inch equals 1 measure in music, and it also equals 1 pizza. Let's go ahead and put some pepperonis in this thing, man. This thing is looking sad, huh? All right. Pizza. That brings us to half. This one right here in the middle is your 1/2 inch. So keep that in mind. All right, so right here where you have your 1/2 inch, that means there would be 2 beats in a measure, right? So you would go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you get that? And if you were playing a musical instrument, you'd go like this. Hmm, hmm. See, there's two. There's two in there. Just like in a pizza, if you take a whole pizza and you cut it in half, you're going to have two halves. Just like you have two halves of an inch. See? Just like you have two beats in that measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, going on to the quarters. These next bigger lines, they're smaller than the ½ inches. As you can see, the biggest line on here is the ½ inch, other than the marks that separate your inches. But the big one in the middle is a half. Now, the half is made up of 2 quarters. These are the next biggest. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 of those, just like in music, in a measure. We would do that like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And just like in a pizza, if we cut that into quarters, you're going to see we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 pieces representing 4 quarters within our pizza, just like 4 quarters are in an inch. All right, now we're going to move on to a little bit more advanced, the 1/8 inch. It's not too complicated, but again, we'll reference music just to get this. And also, I've been noticing it might be better if we do the pizza first. That way we can tap it out to the number of pieces right there. All right, so we have 4 pieces right here, which is 4 quarters in a whole, right? But now we want to split that up again. So all right, now that we've split this up and divided it again evenly, you'll notice that with this pizza right here, we have 8 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just like in music. Now here's where we're going to have to do something a little bit tricky. We're still counting the 4, but we have to put 2 beats within each one of those quarter inches. Just like there are 2 8s. There's 1, 2 with inside. So that would go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Feel me? And the reason we call it an 1/8 is because there's only 8 of them in there, just like there's only 8 8ths on my tape measure within an inch. All right, and the last one is going to be our 16th. And why do we call it a 16th? Because there's 16 of them, right? So if you come to my house, you'll notice that this right here is fine, but if you got a bunch of kids to feed, this ain't gonna work. So what Mama used to do is cut them quarter pieces up into even smaller pieces. That way it made you feel like you was getting a little bit more. Right? There you go. 16 pieces of pizza within a whole piece of pizza. Just like there are 16 dashes within 1 inch. And to show you that musically, I don't know if I'm going to be able to go around the thing, but we will sure try. It goes, let's see. One, 2, 3.
2 hours later.
All right, so I'm not going to be able to go around this pizza thing because well, I'm just not that coordinated. So, but I can tap it out for you and count it off so we can show you. Just like with the 1/8 notes, it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means I was tapping the table 8 times. 16 notes, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so it will go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so you see that? There's 16 pieces of pizza within a whole inch, and there's 16 little dashes in there. So now when you're reading this, you need to make sure that you're calling out the right thing too. So get used to calling them what they are. You definitely don't want to get out on the job and tell somebody, you know, make it 11 and 2 8s. He'll be like, what? We call 2 8s 1 quarter. That's just what you call it in the field. You can call it 2 8s if you want. If you're a beginner and he's been doing it a while, he'll actually know what you're talking about. He may look at you for a second and be like, 2 8s? 2 8s? Oh, quarter inch. And also, we want to call this a ½ inch. We don't want to call it 2 quarters. Nobody says, hey, make it 8 and 2 quarters. There's a 3 quarters, right? And then here at 5 8s. And of course, you definitely don't want to tell somebody, make it 12 16ths. I have to sit there and count them all. That's actually 3 quarter. Well, there you go. That's the basics of reading a tape measure. Hope I made that easy enough for you guys to understand. If you guys have any questions, definitely leave those in the comments. I read all the comments and I'll try my best to answer them. And like I said before, if I don't know the answer, I'll do some research and I'll find it. All right, so moving on. So the extra stuff on the tape measure. I don't want to waste a bunch of time, so we'll just run through this right quick. As you can see, there are black numbers right here, and these are going to represent your inches. We need to be able to distinguish one reading from another, and they generally go from inches and feet on a tape measure. So the feet will be marked with these arrows right here. Generally, they're usually always black. All right, and also now, you'll notice that up here, these numbers are red. Okay, and that's just so that when you get down into farther measurements, you can call out how many inches it is in addition to the feet. So if I'm getting right to right here, I won't have to come to 48 and then go 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, and find out that it's 4'6". Literally, I can just read the 4'6". So that's what that is. That covers your inches with inside the foot, all the red ones. Okay, so you'll also notice that there are red rectangles right here. Sometimes they're squares, but that is to indicate layout. Generally, when you're building homes, you will lay your floors and your walls and your rafters, if you're doing stick framing, out on 16-inch centers. And all that means is from one end to the other, that the edges of your plywood is going to fall in the center of your floor joist, your wall stud, or your rafters. All right, so the last thing that I think on here that you need to know about is going to be these little diamonds right here. You're probably not ever going to use those unless you are framing homes and you're using I-joist. Okay, typically all homes are made with 2x10 floor joist, and 2x12 if it just really needs to be beefed up, but that's not common for me. I'm used to seeing 2x10 floor joist system, and they're laid out on 16-inch centers. However, since they started building more homes today with the I-beams are a little bit more structurally strong, so you're able to space those out a little bit more. Now you can see it's not that much more, but it's to the diamond. So it would be 19.2, that's what we hollered in the field. 19.2, it's actually some number like 19.26, some weird number, but 19.2 as you can see right there. And then so when you're laying your walls out so that you don't have to count every 19 inches along the way, there'll be a diamond, and you'll notice something. You'll notice that at every 8 foot, there's a lot going on there, huh? You have your foot mark thing that is black. You have your red that is on your 16 centers, but you also have that little diamond right there. Why? Because plywood is 8 foot. So generally all 3 of these marks are going to work for that. See what I'm saying? All right, so that's pretty much what all the marks on the tape measure are for. Now I want to show you a couple neat tricks with the tape measure. If you guys have any questions, leave those in the comments. Generally your comments lead to future videos, so don't be shy about that. Get some engagement involved. All right, we're going to be moving on. All right, so I know what you're thinking. More quarter round stuff, Z? Really? We got it. No, really, I did make 2 videos on how to cut quarter round. However, I keep getting some of these questions in there. I don't know if I'm just not explaining it right, but I wanted to get down here tight and give some detail on where to start and stop your measurements when you're measuring for quarter round, baseboard, or any other type of trim for that matter. All right, so I went through the trouble making up this little mock-up with some drywall on here, and I got 2 different types of baseboards. And we're going to go through how to measure where to start and stop. What does hooking and butting mean? In our previous video, we showed you how when we come into a room to start measuring, we start with a piece of wood or paper or whatever, and we just number all the way down. Those are going to be our cuts, correct? We also said we like to make our measurements starting from left to the right, just like you're reading a book. That way, in case one person's measuring and giving the measurements to a cut guy, the other guy will know how to read that. Which side is the short side? Which side is the long side? You read it like a book. So to get started, let's take a look at this really close. Okay, I need to get the number from here to here. The terminology I use for these, if this was an outside corner, I would say that it needs to be short on this side. If it was an inside corner, I would say it needs to be long. Forget about all that. It's square, so we're going to call this side square. Does that make sense? Square. That means it's just chopped off straight. Over here, this is an inside corner. So if I take this piece of quarter round and I slide it in, you'll notice that this is the part that is touching the baseboard. This part is touching the floor. So I want to go with the part that is touching the baseboard. You see, right there. So when I cut these and I tell you square to long, That means just like this piece right here is longer touching the drywall and it's shorter out here. In other words, from here to the end, this side is longer than from here to here. So I would call that the short of my bevel, angle, miter, whatever you want to call it. So going into that corner right there, I need a what? I need a long. It needs to be long. It needs to be looking like that. How do I know which one goes there? It's whatever touches the baseboard. Back here, I need it to be long. If I've tried to make this short, you'll see that it's going to look like that. I'm going to have this big giant hole right there. I don't need that, correct? So I need to cut it long. So my measurement when I write it down will be, and let's take this measurement. 10 and 9/16. Now look, we learned that, right? Because there's 16 of these 16ths in there, and to right there, that's the 9th one. So that's 10 and 9/16. The way I would write that on my board is like this. 10 and 9/16. From square to long. Okay? All right, moving on. Next, take a look at this. This is going to be inside to inside right here. Or on my paper, I would write long to long. We're going to go over that in just a second, but I wanted to go over the part where you stop and start your measurements on, because that's the question that I have gotten a couple times, and I'll make sure I make this part clear. Okay, earlier we talked about the parts of the quarter round and what touches what. We know that out here, the front of it, what I would call it, touches the floor, and the back of it touches the baseboard. So we want to always take our measurements from the back, the part that's actually touching the part we're going against. So over here, this is an outside corner. So if I'm going to write it down on my piece of paper, I'm going to measure like this. I'm hooking that square down there, and I'm coming out to this edge right here. See the edge? It says 22 and 13/16. So that is going to be to my anyone to the short. Why the short? Because it's an outside corner. Now if you really want to write that on your piece of paper as O for outside corner, you can. I've just been writing short and long on my paper forever, and it's going to be kind of hard to switch it up. So this is what it would look like on your piece of paper. 22 and 13/16 from short to square. Notice I put the short on the left side because it's on the left side, and I put the square on that side, and we read it like a book. So if I handed somebody this number, they wouldn't put the square on that side, and they wouldn't put the short on the other side. Does that make sense? All right, moving on. And while we're on this, or we hooking and butting situation and trying to get our numbers precisely, I did want to show you something about the tape measure that maybe you've noticed, but you're not exactly sure why. All tape measures have this, you can see there's a little space in between the end of the blade and the actual blade. This is called the blade, that's what we call it in construction. It's the metal tip at the end, and you'll see that it moves back and forth. Now for you experienced guys who've been doing this a while, you know why that's there. But for you beginners, you're wondering why is that? I'll explain. Let's take a look at this. Remember when we were learning earlier about our quarters, eighths, and sixteenths? Well, when you come over here, you'll notice that from this line to your next quarter, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, right? But here you have 1, 2, we're missing something. Here's the deal on this. This blade right here is just a little bit thicker than a 1/16 of an inch. So when we are butting a wall, that thing gets pushed in. And you'll notice that it's taking into account the thickness of this blade. So from the back side of this blade to this is exactly 1 inch, and it's taking account into that black blade at the front, right? But if we're hooking something like this, like we do when we're measuring something, the blade gets pulled out. And the reason that it gets pulled out is because we are not on the other side of it, right? So now we have from here to the inside of this blade, we have our whole inch. Does that make sense? Because if we try to butt this, that's why when you tell somebody to hold your tape measure and they go over, if they're grabbing it like this and pulling it out like that, not only is it a whole inch in there, but because they're touching the wall, the baseboard, they've added the thickness of this blade in there. So when you pull it out like that, and if somebody's taking a measurement, they say hold the end, and you put it in there, and you actually pull it out like that, then you're going to add a little bit more than a 1/16 to the measurement because you're taking account to the blade. When you're butting, it's made to push in like that. See what I'm saying? And when you're hooking something, it's made to pull out because you don't have the thickness of the blade anymore. It's on the inside of the blade. So from the inside to there is 1 inch. That's very important to remember when you're taking measurements. Okay, so sometimes we're in a situation where we have to measure in between two walls, such as this right here. Another situation where it would come in is when you're measuring a set of steps, and towards the back, the tread is a little bit wider or shorter than it is towards the front. So this little feature comes in handy. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see that there's a number written right there. That number says 3 1/4. All right, this one says 3 1/8. And it's underneath there. It's really tiny. And what that means is from the edge of this to the edge of that metal piece right there is 3 1/8. And of course, same thing with this one, from this one, and this has a square edge. So from the edge of that to the edge of that is 3 1/4. Why is that relevant? I'll show you. What you're going to want to do is you just stick your tape measure up against the wall there, stick it out there and butt it to the other side. And as you can see, this reads to my thing 12 inches. So we would just add 3 1/8 to that, and that would give us 15 1/8. Let's double check that. Looks pretty good to me. All right, so check it out, 15 1/8, right? Look how beautiful that fits. Huh? And then of course you would stick this piece in here. That would be square to long, long to long. For those of you who have been asking that question, this one right here is going to be from long to short. Why? Because we're reading it like a book, and that'll slip in just like that. Okay? And now remember, for those who asked this question, it's not to here, it's the part that's touching the wall that we would write on our paper. And for this one, it's the short. See that? From that wall to the end of this piece, this part of the wood is shorter than that. So I would call that out there the long, and I would call that the short. And when we're measuring, we want to go right to the edge, and we want to make sure that our line goes right on that edge right there. All right guys, so now that you know how to read a tape measure, I'll leave you with a small little hack that I learned a little while back. So if you're wanting to find the middle of something and you need to divide a number in half, here's a quick way to do that. I'm going to go with just a random number like 53 3/8. What you want to do is pull your tape out. You want to take the end of it and come down and put it on 53 3/8, because that's our number. Then if you'll go up here to the top and look in the dead center, you can see whatever number is in the dead middle, that's your number divided in half. And it looks like to me that 53 3/8 divided into 2 is 26 9/16. And that'll work with just about any number, right? So you just pull it out and put it where it is. 74, half of 74, you guys should know that, right? Half of 70 is 35, plus your 2 is 37. Look up there in the middle. 37. All right, so that's your tip for today. I'll add a couple of those with the next videos that are coming. There was a whole lot I really wanted to do, but as you can see, it got dark on me. So it is good that I put these in segments. It probably will be 3 parts. There's a lot to show you that you can do with a tape measure. Trust me, there's a lot of quick things that are fun to do as well. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't mention my boss, the almighty YouTube algorithm. He doesn't want to pay me. He said that I should take payment in likes. So if you guys are enjoying the content that I am putting out and you think this video measures up, then go ahead and put one finger on the like button and push down. And I put videos out like this all the time, so if you would like to see those, or if you want to get notified when I put out part 2 or 3 of this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and make sure you turn on notifications so that YouTube will notify you when I put out videos. Well, that's going to do it for this visit. I hope you guys got some value out of that and you walked away with a new purpose in life. So next time your mom says, hey, can you hang my dream catcher in the dead center of my she shed? Or your dad wants to know how many inches he shrunk since he started riding mechanical bulls, you can say, stand back, bro. I got this. All right. Thanks for watching again, guys. Until next time, take care. Stay safe. Peace.